What's going on, Dunce's family? We are back with another episode of the Dunce's podcast here with Isandro. Isandro, you ready to discuss
Yo,
today's topic, bro?
can't wait.
Me neither. I am eager. And the reason why we're eager, guys, is because today we will be talking about the Denver Nuggets. Yes, we are still in that early phases. I believe this is our fourth team that we've discussed now, or fifth. I don't know. The Denver Nuggets, we're going to be discussing their offseason, what we anticipate for their upcoming season, and how excited we are as just overall basketball fans, not any specific sports teams fans, just basketball fans with the NBA. And with that being said, Isandro, let's get straight into it. So let's talk about this past season a little bit. So as we all know, Jamal Murray was out the entire year after suffering a torn ACL from the season before last season. So he's been out for quite a while now, almost a season and a half. They were also without Michael Porter Jr. for the majority of the year. He did play his first 9 games. He did not look good at all during those 9 games. And then we realized that it was because of his back that just was hindering his performance for the Nuggets this season. But that didn't stop them from making the playoffs. I believe they were the sixth seeded. They lost against the Golden State Warriors in the first round, 4 games to 1. But Nikola Jokic took home that MVP trophy. So, Isandro, with that being said, do you think that Jokic deserved that MVP award, or should it have gone to another player? Probably Joel Embiid. What do you think?
I think he deserved it. I think it was kind of equal for him and Joel Embiid. Because if you look at that Nuggets roster that he had, like I know it's kind of cliche to say, oh, that team is nothing without them, but that team was literally like a bottom seed team without him. And not only were they like competitive, he actually led them to a good record. It was it was sixth, but it was sixth in the West. And
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact record, but it was actually a very good record for a team that should had no business being, even close to that level. So
Right.
he led them, and also, advanced analytics. Anything you want to say about that? I know a lot of people it's kind of divisive, but he kind of carried that too.
Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, him and the Sixers, like the Nuggets and the Sixers, weren't that far off when it came to wins. Now, of course, it's different in the West and the East. Even though the East was, it was by far the more challenging conference this season, but it wasn't really their fault. It was because in the West, you just had a lot of injuries for a lot of teams. Clippers weren't really there, and the Pelicans without Zion, the Blazers without Dame. It was just like an off year for the West. So that's why we saw it as like, oh, this is the East's year, which we inevitably saw that it was not the case because the team that the Nuggets actually lost to in the first round and the Warriors ended up winning the championship. But back to the Nuggets. Do you think that he's gonna have that MVP like fatigue? Like he's not, like they're not gonna give it to him anymore. He just won back to back. A lot of people, thought this one was really controversial. Do you think he's done winning MVPs at least for now, unless he like sets the bar even higher, or like I don't even know if he
Definitively,
can.
yeah, definitely. I mean, literally, it's going to be the Giannis thing. Giannis also deserved MVP this year, but he wasn't even. He was top three, just off of the fact that it was
He's
deserved. If
Giannis.
we're talking
Yeah.
like if Giannis hadn't won a single MVP, he probably would have won this year. To be honest.
Right. Yeah. So with that being said, though, let's move on to what's going on in their off season in this 2022 NBA off season. So not only did they bring in a few new pieces, they made a few trades, but they also are bringing back two guys that I previously mentioned that have been injured in Jamal Murray, who, you know, let's let's just say how it is. He's their second best player, hands down. And then it's their third best player, Michael Porter Jr., right? Who's also coming back from an injury, hopefully a lot more healthy, a lot better. Do you think, Isandro, with those two guys coming back, if they're even a little bit of what they used to be, can they be legit title contenders in the West and just overall in the NBA?
I definitely think Jamal Murray is going to be most of what he was, if not the exact same thing. I mean, an ACL injury isn't the same as what it was before. Players come back exactly the same. The one guy I'm like kind of worried about is MPJ, not
MPJ.
because of this most recent injury, but the fact that it's a reoccurring injury, maybe not
History.
specifically that area of his back, but it's his back. It's always been his back from the very beginning of his career, even before his NBA career. It was a question, and now it's like, what's going on with MPJ? Is he going to be good, or even if he comes back healthy and he's like healthy, is he going to come back the same after all
Right.
these injuries? Like, is he going to play? Are we going to see something like we saw last year within those first 9 games? Big question mark. Big question mark.
Yeah, I think that that's the biggest concern for me. I'm not really too worried about Murray. I think for the same reason. He took a year and a half off, really. I mean, the first full year that he was just there recovering. Then the rest of it is really just trying to get back into basketball shape. And I think with that under his belt, with a whole off season, I think he's ready. I think he'll be fine. MPJ though, like you said, it's way before college, right? No, I'm sorry, way before the NBA. It was during his college career, a little bit during his high school career too, if you don't remember. Um, this guy has always had back issues, and like you mentioned, it might not be a specific area in his back, but it's his entire back. It's just not good, and he's their third best player. And at one point, he was projected to be the number one pick in that draft before his back injury started, you know, faulting him, right? But let's say that they are fully healthy. Do you think that they have a chance to go up against, the Warriors, the Clippers, the Mavs, like we mentioned in the other podcast the other day, or teams in the East, like the Sixers, Boston, Milwaukee, Nets, if they keep most guys there? Like, do you think that these Nuggets are actually good enough to contend against these guys?
Yeah, I think they can. Like we were talking about before, depending on those surrounding players around Nikola Jokic, but he's one of the best players in the NBA, hands down. So as long as the other guys pull their weight, if we see anything close to bubble Jamal, I think they're going to be up there with the rest of the teams.
Yeah, and I think we also have to take into consideration that it is going to be a while for him to readjust, or not a while, but he's not really somebody who tries too hard during the regular season. He mainly tries during the playoffs. But it's a beautiful sight to see when he does, because he is one of the best players in our league. Well, in the league, and it's really fun to watch. Him and Jokic's dynamic. They just work so well together. In fact, I believe this starting lineup is actually one of their best starting lineups that they've ever had under the Jokic, um, you know, tandem, I guess.
In the
And
Jokic era,
era,
probably.
and also throughout the NBA. I would argue that they have possibly, like, just out of not even not sheer talent, but just fit. I feel like these five guys really fit, and their potential starting lineup. The potential starting lineup we have is let me see here. We got Jamal Murray, Kentavious Caldwell Pope, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, and Nikola Jokic. With that, that's just a starting lineup. I'll get into the backups later in the pod, but for now, though, again, Jamal Murray, KCP, MPJ, Aaron Gordon, and Nikola Jokic. Just sheer fit. Do you think that that is the most well balanced lineup this upcoming season? And just to give you like an idea of other lineups, you got the Clippers, right? And John Wall, PG-13, Kawhi, Batum, and Zubac. And then you got other teams like the Warriors, right, who just won the championship, in Curry, Clay, Wiggs, Draymond, Kevon Looney. Other teams, I don't know, like Boston. Boston has a solid starting five in Smart, Brown, Tatum, Horford, um, and Bob Williams. So with this team, Jamal, KCP, MPJ, AG, Nikola Jokic, do you think that that is the most well balanced starting lineup this upcoming season?
Yeah, not the best, but the most well balanced, which definitely puts them up there. And like we were talking about before, they have a potentially top 5 or 6 player in the league on their team. So when you have that guy, all you need is a decent support, not a, well, a little more than a decent supporting cast to contend, and I think he has more than that.
Yeah. You got a player in KCP, 3-and-D guy, who's shot, well over 35% from the three from behind the arc. Like I mentioned, his defense is really solid. And then you got Jamal, like we mentioned, if he's just a little bit of what he was before. You got MPJ, same situation with him, and Aaron Gordon, who I think is a perfect complement for a player like Jokic, who he just does really well in that regard. But let's move on to what they've lost, and I don't know if they've really lost much. If you remember, there was a trade that went down, and Monte Morris and Will Barton heading off to Washington, and the Nuggets receiving KCP, like I just mentioned, who also actually re-signed a 2-year, 30 million with the Nuggets without even suiting up for them. A lot of people don't really like stuff that when that stuff like that happens, but it's pretty cool that it does, especially for this team because it shows Jokic that they're actually trying. And they also got Ish Smith, who will actually make history if he suits up for the Nuggets. I believe he'll be playing for 13 teams or 14 teams. I'm not too sure, but Ish Smith has been around, my boy. So how do you feel about that? Like, do you feel like that was a solid trade, a smart trade? Trading Will Barton and Monte Morris was a solid backup, or do you think Bones Hyland is ready to take on that 6-man role off your bench? What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I forgot about Bones Hyland for a second there, but yeah, yeah,
Bonesy.
they have good backups. Um, Monte was good, Will was good, but I think usage and defense was like the kind of downfall there. So kind of swapping that for some 3 and D with obviously less usage because it's a 3 and D player. That's a little better, especially with Jamal Murray coming back and Will Barton being best on the ball.
Yeah.
He's not going to be able to have that because Jamal's coming back. It's kind of like we don't really need you.
Right. Right. And there was also another signing or another transaction that they made. In this case, let's bring in two guys. Let's talk a little bit about one of them in DeAndre Jordan. How do you feel about the Nuggets replacing DeMarcus Cousins with DeAndre Jordan? How do you feel about that?
Terrible, absolutely awful. The only reason I could think of them doing that
Money.
is maybe DeMarcus wanted it. Yeah, money.
Yeah.
DeMarcus wanted too much, and they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, we got a good center. He plays most of the minutes we got anyway. Let's just get a garbage time. Center, garbage center, doesn't matter." But
Yeah.
those non-Jokic minutes were iffy, and DeMarcus was good. And now with DeAndre Jordan, they are going to be horrendous. He's going to be playing like 8 minutes a game, and then they're going to have Jokic on for pretty much the rest of the game and how bad he's going to play.
But don't
Crazy.
you think that this is also like kind of he might just be a third stringer because they also have another player in Zeke Nahi who has shown flashes of potential. He is only 6'9", but the NBA, I mean, let's be real, there's no true bigs like besides Jokic and Embiid. So how do you feel about maybe Zeke Nahi taking over that backup center role? Like, do you think he's up for that challenge? Along with Bones Highland and these the other bench pieces that I'll mention in just a second. Like, do you think that
He's gonna
that might
have
be a
to
case?
because DeAndre is not a second string center caliber player. Yeah, we said it multiple times. He shouldn't be in the league. He I don't know what he's doing at this point. I mean, I can't blame him. Get your bag, bro. But
Yeah.
nah,
I
he's
mean
gonna have
that
to
the
step up.
vet minimum is beautiful for him. But there was another addition, also a former net. Shout out my Nets here, and I'm gonna miss this guy so much, bro, because he played with so much heart. He was our best player against the Celtics this playoffs. I don't know if that means anything because we did lose 4-0. But Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown has left the Nets and he has joined the Denver Nuggets on a 2-year, $13 million deal. How do you feel about this deal for the Nuggets? And before you say anything, just remember Bruce Brown is buckets from the corners. Like he does not miss from those corners, man. Especially in the playoffs. If you notice, he was cooking Boston because obviously they weren't guarding him because they were all over KD and Kyrie. But what's asked to do when you're
No, I
playing
agree.
around
Everything you just
talents,
said.
he's got to shoot,
Yeah,
right? So how do you feel about Bruce Brown?
he's good. Great. Well, D and kind of three from the
Hmm.
corner league. You
Oh
said,
yeah,
but really he just does everything. He gives a lot of heart, and they're getting better defensively, which is something that they really needed.
yeah,
Can't complain. It's a good signing, especially with the amount of money he's making. I thought he was going to be like making more if he was
yeah.
leaving the Nets. So he left the Nets, and he's still making like chips. So he's really not making
Yeah, like
much.
six and a half million a year. That's it's nothing.
I
I
thought he was going
thought
to be worth
I
more.
thought he was gonna get 13 million just one year, like at least like a 30 something $1 million
If
for like
he
3 years,
if
something
he
like
was
that.
leaving the Nets, I thought that's what he was going to be making because it's like if the Nets offer him money and he doesn't take it, it's because he would have been making more elsewhere. But I mean, now we know with the context of the situation of
Yeah,
the
then
front
that's
office or
yeah.
whatever. Like he knew something was brewing. He got out of there, and now he's in a better situation. So big ups to
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, you can't be mad at him. He's joining a really good team in Golden State. I mean Golden State. Whoa. In Denver, showing a really good team in Denver. I don't know why I said Golden State. I think I'm just thinking a lot about championships right now, and I think the Nuggets actually have that chance. But how do you feel about them losing Bryn Forbes and Austin Rivers? Bryn Forbes he's a sniper, right? He's a solid 3-point shooter.
How
Austin
did they lose him? He
Rivers
was a
is
free agent.
free agent. They actually both signed with Minnesota. I guess they were friends and they were like, "Oh, let's go to Minneapolis." Um, were those two guys, big losses, or did the addition of Bruce Brown kind of waver that? And then also re-signing Davon Reed, who's also another 3-and-D guy, not much on the defensive end, but can definitely shoot. Is that too much of a loss in Austin Rivers and Bryn Forbes, or is that more like we're happy with what we got?
We didn't really see much from Bryn Forbes, but I was kind of hoping that next season was going to be like if they had him plus everybody else, I think that would have been a lot better. But they ended up getting other pieces, so they don't
Better
really need
pieces.
him. He just would have been
Yeah.
nice, honestly. He would have been nice to have that extra shooting.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is what it is. Like it's not a huge loss. Austin, like they had Austin because they needed him. Because I
Yeah.
mean, who did they have? Faku.
Monte Morris. Oh, shout out Campazzo, who's also he's a free agent. I hope he signs somewhere in the NBA though, because he's a lot of fun to watch, man. He's so crafty. Just love the way he plays. Um, so yeah, so I basically mentioned their backups. But how do you feel about them in the playoffs? So the backups, I have a 10-man rotation. I don't have a 10-man rotation for all teams. Doesn't mean that most teams are going to use them, but this is just what I came up with. We got Bones Hyland, Bruce Brown, Davon Reed, Jeff Green, and Zeke Nahi. Do you think that that's a solid backup? Backups for your starters, or should they go out and look for another free agent? Maybe there's another
Who
free
else
agent
are they
out
gonna
there.
get? This is the best they could do is what they got, to be honest. Unless there's somebody missing.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's really no one else. I mean, now it's just a bunch of rookies, and I mean, Ish Smith technically, he can be that veteran instead of Bones, but I kind of want to play Bones because Bones is young and he hustles. Like he's a pretty smart player, and I like the way he plays. But do you think that that's enough for a championship caliber bench? Because we all got to remember, when it comes to championships, your bench matters a lot. So is this enough for a championship level bench, or do you think that they should, try to make another move? I don't know, for another player that might work out better for that bench unit, like maybe a backup small forward, or maybe even a backup big if Nyahi doesn't work out. Like, what do you think?
That's kind of like a deadline question in terms of the big. So other than that, not really much they can do. But then again, we're not front office people. We don't know. Like maybe they'll see something that we can't see.
Yeah,
They'll be 5 or 10 steps ahead. They'll make them move. But right now, it looks like they kind of just have to wait and see how the league plays out. I think they're going to be a great regular season team and a contender. But during the regular season, they're going to be fine. And at the end of the day, in the playoffs, you kind of like you shrink a little bit. It goes from like 11, 10 to like 7 or 8, right?
yeah, around
So
there.
they have like like 7 or 8 players that they can kind of rely on, and people are going to step up in the playoffs. They kind of hope. So I think tentatively they're good for now, but we'll see how the season plays out.
Yeah, I think that's I mean, obviously that's what we have to wait for all teams, but it's just really cool to see that the Nuggets have made all these moves and they're trying to prove to Jokic that yeah, there might be minor moves to the rest of us, to the naked eye or to the casual fans, but they're actually really important moves for a team like Denver that's really trying to prove to Jokic that yeah, we just lost, our president, of basketball operations, but we're still doing a good job just trying to keep you happy and to make sure that you have a good enough roster to be a potential candidate for a title for your franchise. With that being said, though, overall this offseason, in bringing back the guys off of injury, helping developing your young guys in Highland and Nyahi, and then also trading for KCP, Ish Smith, veteran locker room presence, signing Bruce Brown and DeAndre Jordan, who is somewhat of a locker room presence. Do you think that this is a good offseason for them? Should they have, try to, enter into that Bradley Beal type where like they could trade some of their guys and try to get after Bradley Beal? Like, do you think that this is exactly what they needed to do? What do you think?
Yeah, 100%. They took care of business. They did what they had to do, which in general is good, but especially looking at the landscape of the NBA, how it's kind of like that's not, you can't expect that from teams nowadays. Like you would think like, oh, it's obvious that this team does this or this team doesn't do
Right.
that, and then they'll just do something out of left field. It's like, well, you didn't. Okay, why did you do that? Like the Lakers last year, like, hey, get in, go easy, get a nice DeMar DeRozan, use the rest of your pieces to surround LeBron with shooters. No, we're gonna decrease his spacing. We're gonna. I'm not gonna go into this, but it's like
Yeah.
teams
Well, they have their own pod, but yeah, I get what you mean.
they have their own podcast. But what I'm trying to say is they did what they were supposed to do, which is a little more than the bare minimum, and that is good. Like, don't go
Yeah.
crazy. That if you don't have to, this was not the off season to do that. Maybe next year or the year after, maybe take a patient approach to wait and see,
Yeah. Yeah.
because there's going to be more free agents coming up, definitely. But this was not the off season to do that, and they did well.
Yeah, I think they actually have probably the best signing in all of free agency in Bruce Brown. For that little amount of money, I think that's the best deal that you can get for somebody that good. And I know it as a Nets fan, it's beautiful to watch. So I'm excited. I give their offseason an A plus. I think that they have um actually exceeded expectations because they got KCP really for scraps. I mean, Monte Morris is a good player, but Will Barton just hasn't really been good for the last, year or so because of his injuries and stuff.
In flashes, like he'll go off a
Yeah, but
game, and then
it's
another game it'll be kind of.
yeah, he's just been too injury prone. Also, I'd just like to mention they did trade for the 30th pick. They traded Jermichael Green for that, who ended up signing with the Warriors. Not really that relevant, but then again, the Nuggets, they know how to find gems. So who knows? Maybe these picks in the late first round and early second round might actually become something. But you never know. This team is good enough now to compete, so I don't think that they're too worried about that. But what grade do you give them, Isandro?
I'll give him a B minus.
B minus. You talking all this stuff like, oh, they did so good. What you mean B minus?
They did good for what they had to do, but it like they didn't really have to do much. I can't say, oh my gosh, amazing A plus. I'll give him a B. I'll give him a B. I
That
raised
that
him.
makes zero sense because I give them an A plus because that signing of Bruce Brown just
But
it exceeded expected. Like that
what I'm
was
trying to
great.
say is their maximum potential was only a B plus, because it's like, what else can you do? You did what you had to do. Like this was the max. Like they did the best that
But
they
you
could.
got to remember that they lost their guy to do all this stuff make all these transactions. The guy that brought in Jokic, the guy that signed Murray and all these guys, like he left. He was a really important piece for them. And then him leaving, I believe he joined Minnesota. Was it? I think he joined Minnesota. Um, him leaving was like, whoa. To Jokic, it could be like, oh my god, like this guy's leaving. What's next for this franchise? And the franchise did exactly what they could do, and who knew that they could even do that? Because going after trades like this, there's minimal trades, signing a player like Bruce Brown for that little, and then trusting in your young guys and in their development staff. I think that just speaks volumes to the organization. Like no matter who you plug in there, you're gonna put somebody there that that just wants to do what's best for the organization and what's best for Jokic, their best player, their MVP caliber player. And I think they did an exceptional job. That's why I give them the A plus. But I do get what you mean. They did what they had. They had not much money, and whatever they did have, they spent on good players, solid rotational players. So I can see why be I don't know, man. I just I love what they did. Especially not anticipating losing such an important piece of the organization's front office. They're set, man, and I really think that they can really compete and push for a championship this upcoming season. If not this season, maybe the year after. Excuse me, because we still got to wait and see what's good with Murray and MPJ. But with that being said, Isandro, I'm done with my take here. I'm sure you are as well. Pretty short pod, but we got a lot done here, a lot said. Um, but with that in mind, guys, let's move on to something else that I did want to discuss that I just wanted to mention to our viewers and listeners. The last episode, something happened with our video. So if you got up to this point, shout out to you. But also, that won't probably happen again. Now we fixed it. The error has been removed. It's going to be normal like this. It was just a small little hiccup. So sorry about that, guys. But with that being said, Isandro, my boy, thank you for joining up with me and talking to me. For those who are listening or watching us on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and hit the like button down below. Shout us out to all your families, brothers, cats, sisters, dogs, everything on all social media platforms. We are also on all your podcasting platforms. So please feel free to share with everybody because we need the listens, guys. We're really, trying here. So you guys have a good night and